Hey guys, what's going on? I hope you all are doing well today. Elliot here, welcome back to The Fragrance Well. So I'm coming up on roughly my 2-year anniversary of collecting fragrances, and I started to think back when I first got started and thought about the first handful of fragrances I got and asked myself, would I buy them again? Do I still wear them today? And if I was recommending fragrances to anybody who is getting started, would I recommend some of these? Let's talk about it. We'll get into it right now. Okay guys, so I've got 11 fragrances here. I was gonna do 10, but there was one I did not wanna leave out, and these are all the fragrances I got roughly the first month to month and a half of me collecting. To the best of my knowledge, they are in order from the first one I bought to the last one I bought, to the best of my knowledge. First one is this one right here, from the house of Jimmy Choo, Jimmy Choo Man Intense. Jimmy Choo Man Intense is the very first fragrance I purchased when I decided I was going to become a collector. I unfortunately did pay full retail for this because at the time I did not know about discounters. That being said, this fragrance, I think it's a good one. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for anyone else being the first fragrance they get, but I do think it is a good starter fragrance. Fresh, it has some aromatic touches, very much in a barbershop style way, but more modern, has some sweetness to it. For anyone first starting out, especially if they're brand new to fragrances in general, they're gonna think it smells nice and pleasant. Since my nose has matured quite a bit since actually getting this, it does smell very artificial. It's not a very natural smelling fragrance. Far from the highest quality, but it's still pleasant to wear. I do still wear this. I consider it a barbershop scent, so sometimes I will wear this when I go get my hair cut and when I'm going to the barbershop. So this does still get wears out of me, so it still holds a place in my collection. Once again, from the house of Jimmy Choo, this is Jimmy Choo Man Intense. Alright, so the second fragrance I purchased when I started collecting is from the house of Mont Blanc. It's Legend Spirit. Mont Blanc Legend Spirit. This one here, very much done in the style of Invictus Aqua. It's very sweet, it's fresh, it's aquatic, has some saltiness to it, has some kind of fruity accords. It's also not a very authentic smelling fragrance. However, I do think this one is one I would definitely recommend to anybody who is starting a collection, especially if they're just new to fragrances in general. I think you'll be a lot more likely to accept this one versus Jimmy Choo Man Intense. It's a people-pleasing fragrance. It's not overly expensive. You're gonna enjoy wearing it, I think. This is not one I necessarily wear as much as I used to when I first got it, but it still will be, for me, kind of a grab and go fragrance, especially when it's hot outside. So I still think I wanna keep this one in my collection. Once again, from the house of Mont Blanc, Mont Blanc Legend Spirit. Alright, so the next purchase in my collection was coming from the house of Dior, Sauvage Eau de Parfum. Dior Sauvage Eau de Parfum. It's the only original Sauvage formulation that I have. I don't have any of the other ones, but I think any of them can work. Probably more so the Eau de Toilette versus the Parfum. But, you know, at the end of the day, once you get into collecting, particularly if you're going to be a part of the fragrance community, you're going to hear about this. You might hear about it or have smelled it or even owned it before you decide to start collecting. So Sauvage, you know, people get tired of talking about it. They think it's overdone. They say everybody's wearing it. At the end of the day, this fragrance here is one I think people, if you're going to be a collector, you need to experience it. You need to know about it. It's the top selling fragrance over the past 5 years or so. So you need to know what the top smelling fragrance is and understand why. In my opinion, you do. This naturally does not get that many wears out of me anymore. I still like the fragrance. Yeah, I do get kind of bored of it. It's not one I want to wear a lot, but to me, it's a great grab and go. If you want something that is going to be pleasing to the people around you, we all know this is one of the best fragrances on the market to achieve that. Would I suggest this to anybody who is new to collecting? Yes, I would. It's not necessarily going to be my favorite suggestion, but the fact of the matter is this is a fragrance that I think people will, if they're new to collecting, they will really enjoy and really experience what a fragrance can do for you, can do for your confidence. You can kind of understand, or start to understand at least, you know, what getting a compliment is like, and also what a good mass appealing fragrance can be. So once again, from the house of Dior, Sauvage Eau de Parfum. Alright, so the next one is from the house of Jesus Del Pozio, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's how you say it. Halloween Man X. Halloween Man X. Now, when I first got into collecting and was consuming fragrance content online, particularly YouTube, this fragrance was definitely very much a hype beast at the time. You don't really hear about it too much now, I think mainly because there's a lot more options that are just as cheap as this one is or can be, and matching the quality of this. This is kind of a sweet, gourmand-like kind of fragrance. So when you're new to collecting, this kind of can give you a peek into that kind of realm. It has spices to it. There's a coffee accord in here. It doesn't necessarily smell like coffee exactly, but it just gives it a kind of characteristic that if you're new to fragrances might be very interesting. I know it was for me. It's going to be people pleasing. People are certainly going to enjoy this, but like I said, this fragrance is kind of one of many at this point. There's a lot of fragrances for the price of this one, if not cheaper, that can achieve that same kind of thing to introduce you to really sweet, gourmand-like fragrances where there's spices, boozy accords, food-like accords. It's an introduction into that category of fragrances. Would I recommend this one to anybody that is new to fragrances? Yeah, I would tell them to check this one out. Once again, it's not a super expensive fragrance, but there are many in this category now that I think are good if you want to experience a fragrance like this. But yes, I would still suggest it. Once again, this is Halloween Man X. Okay, so the next one's coming from the house of Guerlain. This is Guerlain Homme Eau de Parfum. Guerlain Homme Eau de Parfum. So this one here kind of smells like a mojito in the opening of the fragrance. Has a lot of florals in the heart of it, kind of a woodsy, dry, earthy, dry down. I first became interested in this fragrance because it had that rum accord. I was very curious to see what a boozy fragrance might smell like. Now, this is not the best version of a boozy fragrance, but you definitely pick up on the mojito-like vibe, so it is an introduction in a way. This fragrance still gets plenty of wear out of me, especially in the springtime or when it's hot out. I like to spray it on really heavily. When it's hot out, it's very refreshing, it's very bright, great for that environment in my opinion. Would I recommend this one to someone who is new? No, I would not. Because honestly, when I first got this, I didn't quite understand it. I didn't hate it, I just didn't quite understand it. It was definitely a level of perfumery that if you're relatively new, whether you wore fragrances or not before you started collecting, I don't think you would necessarily understand what this is trying to convey. You need to be a little bit more experienced, in my opinion, to really appreciate a fragrance like this, which over time, I grew to love this fragrance. Once again, from the house of Guerlain, Guerlain Homme Eau de Parfum. All right, next one's coming from the house of Lalique. This is Encre Noir Sport. Lalique's Encre Noir Sport. This one came in at the exact same time as Guerlain Homme, and this was another one I did not quite understand at first. I wouldn't say that I hated it, I just didn't quite understand it. I also tested it at the same time with Guerlain Homme on my hand, which is a huge mistake because these two fragrances together do not meld well when you're smelling them at the same time. So that was a horrible experience, so I knew I needed to separate them to try them out. But once a lot of time passed, this actually became one of my favorite gym scents. I still wear this one heavily to the gym. I wear this to rehearsals a lot. I wear this when it is very hot out and I just want to throw something fresh on. I really enjoy this fragrance now. I do believe this was my first fragrance that featured vetiver. It does so in a very clean way, but this one is definitely not the best fragrance to be introduced to vetiver. Something like gray vetiver is going to be a much better option in my opinion. However, to be introduced to the Encre Noir line, I still think this is the best fragrance for that. Would I recommend this fragrance to anybody new? Yes, but with caution. The fragrance is very cheap, so that's a great thing, but I would tell them, like, this one is going to be different for you, so give it some time, spend some time with it, see if it's something that you like. If you don't, that may be a sign that vetiver is not a scent for you. Once again, from the house of Lalique, Encre Noir Sport. All right, and the next one's coming from the house of Hermes, Terre d'Hermes, the Eau de Toilette, the OG, the modern day classic, Dirty Orange. So this one here was not a blind buy for me. I was able to sample this and smell it at all the department stores I have around me, and I instantly knew I wanted this one. I liked it from first sniff, so you can almost say this was really my introduction into vetiver, but obviously it's completely different from Encre Noir Sport. It's got that bitter orangeness to it, dirty orange if you will, very earthy fragrance, very dirty fragrance, kind of smoky, has some powdery benzoin-like touches as well. This fragrance is an absolute love for me. As you can see, I've put quite a dent in this one, so I definitely still wear this one. This one will always get wears from me every year. Doesn't matter how many fragrances I have, it's gonna get at least one wear. Would I recommend this fragrance to someone who is new? What I would say is this is a fragrance you need to experience because it is an important fragrance in the community. It's very well known. It's kind of, I don't know if I call it a trendsetter, but it definitely is a staple in the fragrance world, especially in recent history. But I would also say it's one you need to try first because not everybody likes this scent profile, especially if they're new. I know it is one that tends to grow on people when they spend more time with it, but to just kind of buy it outright and not have your nose on it first, I wouldn't recommend that. Once again, from the house of Hermes, this is Terre d'Hermes, the Eau de Toilette. Alright, so this next one's coming from the house of Acqua di Parma. This is Sandalo. Acqua di Parma, Sandalo. So this was a brave first buy for me, but it was not a blind buy. I did test this at my local Neiman Marcus, and I really liked the way it smelled. I actually tested it on my skin and everything. However, it was mixing with other stuff I was testing on my skin as well. So when I got this in, I really had to kind of get used to the opening. It's very lemony in the opening. There are a few citrus accords listed in the opening of the fragrance, but I primarily pick up lemon. There's also some lavender and some cardamom in the heart of this, so it kind of has a nice warm spiciness to it. But given its namesake, it is primarily creamy sandalwood sweetened up with a little bit of tonka. It's really a gorgeous fragrance, but as I said, I had to get used to this one. But I do still wear it from time to time. I really like this fragrance. Would I recommend this one to anybody new? No, no, and no. I do not think this is something anybody new to fragrances and even people who have spent some time are necessarily gonna jump on this one. As I said, I sampled this one first. If I hadn't sampled this, I definitely would not have just picked this up for no reason. All that being said, it's not a bad smelling fragrance. It's not necessarily challenging, but it is very specific in what it does, and I think you need to really appreciate this style of perfumery if you're gonna get one like this. It's by far not the most popular fragrance from the house of Acqua di Parma. There's a lot more that I think are more wearable or more easily liked that come ahead of this one. So once again, from the house of Acqua di Parma, this is Sandalo. All right, so the next one's coming from the house of Versace. This is Versace Man Eau Fraiche. Versace Man Eau Fraiche. Would I recommend this? I'll just cut to the chase. Would I recommend this one to anybody new? Yes, yes, and yes. You can get it for a very great price on discounters. It's all 100 mils, so you get plenty of juice. You can spray it all over yourself and nobody will complain. It's very fresh, it's clean. It's got some citrus accords, kind of fruity as well. Super easy to wear fragrance, great for the summertime. I do still wear this. I kind of wear it when I'm just running errands. It's not one I necessarily want to wear when I'm going out, if you will, but I still definitely use this fragrance. I think out of all the fragrances I've talked about on this list, if I'm gonna recommend one, this is the easiest one to wear out of all of them. In my opinion, if anybody thinks differently, let me know in the comments. I think by far, if you want to get somebody into fragrances, this is a good one to get them started with. Versace Man Eau Fraiche once again. All right, so the next one's also coming from the house of Versace. This is Versace Dylan Blue. Versace Pour Homme Dylan Blue. This one here, aquatic fragrance, aromatic, kind of a spicy touch, has some incense to give it a different feel. Overall, a very good solid fragrance. However, it's not one that I wear that much anymore, and frankly, this is the only fragrance on this list that I could do without. When I first got the fragrance in, it had this crazy metallic tinge to it, which there is kind of a metallic likeness in the opening of this fragrance, but it was on steroids when I first got the fragrance. Thankfully, once I had it a little bit longer and sprayed it a little bit more, that died down a bit. So I'm more open to wearing it, but ultimately this fragrance DNA is just not one that I'm all that impressed with. So I just don't wear it that often anymore. That being said, would I recommend this fragrance to somebody who's just starting out? Yes, I think for the masses, most people are going to really like this scent. I really liked it when I smelled it on someone else, but once I got it in, it just wasn't the same. All that being said, it is a blue scent. You can wear it anywhere. It will work anywhere. It's going to be pleasing to people around you. And I know more people like the fragrance than those that dislike it. I know it's not a favorite amongst everyone, but it is definitely a functional fragrance, great for someone who is new to fragrances. So once again, from the house of Versace, this is Dylan Blue. All right, and last but not least, coming from the house of Azzaro, this is Wanted by Night. Azzaro Wanted by Night. Now this fragrance, when I started collecting, I do believe this was the latest in the Wanted line, so this was all the hype and concerning Azzaro and the Wanted line. It has now clearly been overshadowed by the the most wanted fragrances and its flankers, which honestly I can understand, but this fragrance I think is a more interesting composition, so I still like this one the most. Got some spiciness to it, a little bit of a fruitiness on the top, has tobacco, awesome composition. I do still wear this from time to time. I certainly don't wear it as much as I used to. I just have a lot of other things that I think are, let's just be real, better than this. But would I recommend it to anybody? I would. I don't know if they necessarily go for it, because let's just be real. The most wanted fragrances are going to be easier to wear, easier to understand. They're a lot simpler. Not saying that in a bad way, they just are more simple compositions. This one's a little more complex. But the selling point I would give them is this is going to be a cheaper purchase, because those most wanted fragrances still go for a good price on discounters, even though they're lower than retail. Now, this used to be a lot cheaper than it is now, but it's still cheaper than those are. Once again, from the House of Azzaro, this is Wanted by Night. Alright guys, that's it. That was the first 11 fragrances I bought when I first started collecting. Hey, let me know down in the comments below. Is this a W? Did I do a good job with my fragrances? What are some of the fragrances you got when you first started collecting? Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and remember to hit that bell icon so you can be notified when I upload new content. Remember to be well and smell well, and I will see you in the next episode of The Fragrance Well. Have a good one.